I'm sorry? Oh, okay. I call the January 9th meeting of the school committee to order. Let me just do a quick rundown of the agenda for this evening. It's a fairly simple and straightforward agenda. So we'll first start with public comment for anything that's not on the agenda. We will review our consent agenda, which has, I believe, just one item on it this evening. We will move to reports, and then in new business tonight, we're going to review both the regular day and special education cost centers of the budget as a continuation of last week's meeting. And that will take us to the end of the evening. So, and we've got people joining the meeting. Okay, so first I'll open up public comment if there's anybody that would like to comment on anything not on the agenda. Seeing none, we can move to the consent agenda. And Carla, is there a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved by Carla, seconded by Tom. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Nope. Okay, all in favor? All opposed? 6-0. We'll move to reports. I will start with Dr. Stice.
Okay, thank you very much. It's nice to see everybody. I'm very happy to report that last Friday we did an informal exit interview with the state regarding our TFM, which stands for Tiered Focus Monitoring. It used to be called the Coordinated Program Review, and they're looking at our different standards. So just to give you an idea of the scope of this, there were 10 standards regarding special education, and we uploaded 27 documents, and there were 17 standards regarding civil rights, and we uploaded 29 documents originally. And then between November 29th and January 4th, we uploaded an additional 14 documents to show the work that we have been doing. The state came and did a parent orientation to the CPAC on December 20th, and they sent out a survey, and the district had 166 responses from parents, including 2 requests for in-person interviews. They also came and toured 5 different schools and did 9 different interviews of staff. So it was a very comprehensive look at our district and are we following the special education and civil rights regulations? And they gave us a lot of great feedback. If there is anything that they found as an issue, we'll engage in a progress monitoring cycle with them to correct it. But they were very, very positive. Some of the things that they were really complimented us on were the work we're doing on attendance and our procedures and looking at our data. They also commented on the equity work we're doing, our school improvement planning, and our handbooks as being very comprehensive. And they're really excited to share with us their feedback, and we should have that within 30 days. So that was a big accomplishment for student services and for the curriculum department, because it was very much hand in hand to make sure that we are in compliance with the regulations. So we are thrilled about that. And then the other thing we've been doing is we continue to have our community connections meeting, where we're meeting with all of the major stakeholders in the town of Reading, for example, the Y and Communitas and Reading Rec and the school department. And some amazing things have come out of that, including making sure translations for different town events and flyers are going home in students' native languages. And we're really building our knowledge and capacity of all of the great things that are happening in Reading. So just to highlight a few, there's going to be an annual Martin Luther King Jr. Day community breakfast and cultural program on January 16th at the high school, and the breakfast will start at 9:30. The cultural program will start at 10 for anybody that is interested in attending that. Also, Communitas is presenting a teen drama club for students with disabilities ages 11 through 21, and it's an adaptive drama club. It's going to be on Thursdays from 5 to 6. They are looking for people who are interested, so if that's something that you are interested in, please feel free to reach out to Communitas. And finally, this has been something that we have been talking a lot about. The Y is beginning their adaptive swim program, and they are running several sessions on Saturdays and Tuesdays, and there will be more information coming out for the students that are eligible. But they actually have a request, and John told me it was anybody with a big heart, no skill needed, but they're looking for some adults or older students who would like to volunteer their time to be an additional hands in the pool and around the pool during that time. So if anyone is interested in helping out at the Y with that program, please reach out to the YMCA.
Great, thank you. Dr. Hardy.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I have a few quick updates for you. As you may know, one of the local organizations that supports our schools is Reading Educational Foundation, REF. I'm excited to let you know that we recently concluded our grant cycle here at the school level. Our teachers are able to submit a grant. It's approved by the principal, then it comes up to central office for review. We approved and sent on to REF 13 grants that, if all approved, would total about $120,000. I don't want to give anything away because it's up to REF to either approve or disapprove those grants, but they all really looked at innovative ways to provide supports for staff and for students, and they were exciting. It's exciting to see our staff really think out of the box and apply some ideas that I think could be helpful. So more to come on that. I look forward in the spring to being able to share with you the grants that are approved. Also, two quick updates. As you know, this year at the elementary level, we are underway with two quite large curriculum material implementations. Very exciting work underway, so I wanted to give you a quick update on some exciting things happening in that area. With our ARC-Core program, that is our literacy program that this year is being implemented in grades 3 through 5 across all 5 of our elementary schools. We are just about to launch Unit 3. That program consists of 4 units for each grade level, so that means we're about halfway through the material. And one of the things that is really exciting as we launch Unit 3 that's new is, so throughout this year, we've had Erin Burchell, who's our ELA coordinator, has been running an implementation team alongside all of the work and training that's happening. And the implementation team is made up of our Reading teachers who meet regularly to talk about how implementation is going, what's working, and what supports are needed. And that team, under Erin's leadership, has come up with an opportunity for teachers to get together and do some of their previewing of the unit and preparing of materials ahead of time. This is even outside of the regular training and professional development that's occurring. Just a really nice example of how our teachers are embracing the work, how much work and effort they really are putting in to making this successful for students, and also that our teachers on the implementation team really are taking a leadership role as well, which is exciting to see. So kudos to Erin and the implementation team for organizing that, and we're excited to launch Unit 3. You're going to get to hear a lot more about our core implementation at the beginning of February. Erin is going to come and present to school committee sort of an update on how implementation has been going this year. So that's just a little teaser for you. For our other big implementation that's underway at the elementary level is for illustrative math, IM, and this year we are rolling that curricular resource out with our kindergarten, first grade, and second grade teachers. As you may remember, last year, 3rd through 5th grade did implement that program. And so this year we were able to learn a lot. This work is being directed by our STEM coordinator, Heather Leonard, and last year she had launched an implementation team. This year again has an implementation team and was able to learn a lot so that as we go into that implementation, lessons learned are applied. One other thing that Heather had initiated, which I think she mentioned to you when she came and presented to you a while back, was organizing a group of state leaders from across other districts that are implementing IM. And as part of that work, Reading is collaborating with Wakefield, which is not too far away, to do a couple of things. We have teachers from Wakefield visiting Reading, and then our teachers visiting Wakefield, and then we're actually going to co-sponsor a parent night. So this is a wonderful opportunity to grow our teachers' practice, make connections with a surrounding community, and share resources in that regard. So outstanding work happening in the learning and teaching department. That's really exciting, with really just the ultimate goal of improving outcomes for our students.
Thank you. Ms. Baton,
I have no reports for
Okay.
the school committee this evening.
you've got plenty to talk about later. Dr. Milczewski? No report. No report. I'll just look to see if there are any liaison reports.
I have one.
Go ahead, Carla.
There was a permanent building committee meeting tonight at 6, and they basically were talking about the water tower, but I won't bore you on that. But I will tell you, they talked about Turf 1, and obviously that job is completed, but in the past 2 weeks, they added a video board to the bottom of the scoreboard, which we think it's just for advertising. I asked if you could do replays, but nobody knew, so. And then the Parker roof, they're ready to go, and they're starting 2 days after school ends. So as of right now, June 23rd. That's it.
Great. Anyone else? Erin?
Not so much a report, but CPAC has their monthly meeting next Tuesday night. It's going to be virtual, and the topic is going to be special needs planning. They have a special attorney coming in to speak, and PAIR is having their monthly meeting Wednesday night at 6 at the library, and anyone is welcome.
Okay, with that, I will hand to Dr. Milczewski and the team for tonight's budget presentation.
Let's see if we can share screen here.
Is it telling you no?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay,
Here we go.
there we go.
Well, this evening, we are going to touch upon just two aspects of our FY24 recommended budget. We're going to provide an overview of the FY24 recommended budget cost centers, big picture, regular day, and special education. And then we're going to delve more deeply into the investment priorities for both regular day and special education. And those priorities are aligned by our strategic objectives. The FY24 recommended budget, and you might recall seeing this slide during our last meeting on January 5th, our budget is divided into 5 different cost centers. The 2 cost centers that make up the majority of our budget is a regular day at about 59% of our budget and special education at 31% of our budget. What we're going to share with you this evening over the next couple of slides is, again, just a very high-level overview of both of those 2 cost centers. Regular day has a total budget for FY24 of $31,954,000. The change between FY24 and FY23 is an increase of $2.2 million, which represents about a 7.6% increase. The personnel change totaled $2.2 million, and the non-personnel change totaled $36,000. So most of that incremental increase in regular day had to do with staff. Those staff increases focused entirely on 2 areas: cost of living and other contractual obligations like degree changes and longevity stipends, and also the investment priorities, which we'll hear more extensively in subsequent slides. The non-personnel budget changed under $40,000 and focused on about 4 different areas: Project Wayfinder, which was previously funded through ESSER grants, library books for this media center here at Reading Memorial High School, new photocopier for the high school, and a few investment priorities, for example, expanding the seal of literacy certification.
Can you ask a question real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
Susan, sorry to interrupt real quick, but photocopier, are we buying that or renting it?
We're leasing the
Leasing
copier.
it? Okay. And that comes with the service plan and everything else like that?
It does, yes.
Thank you.
So that's just a high-level overview of regular day. On the next slide, I wanted to share with you an overview of the special education and student services budget. The FY24 special ed budget totals $16.7 million. This is a decrease of $214,000 over FY23. And I wanted to make a special point to mention that this decrease is in no way related to the reduction of staffing or services or supplies. About $255,000 of the reduction in special ed between this year and FY24 has to do with one unassigned out-of-district tuition fee for a residential placement. Some of the other changes in the special ed budget for both personnel and non-personnel have to do with COLA and degree changes, just like what we saw for regular day, and investment priorities, which again we'll hear more about this evening. In non-personnel, there were several different changes that impacted that non-personnel decrease. We terminated, or we're in the process of terminating a post agreement with Wakefield Public Schools. We've reduced our legal services budget. We did increase by about $30,000 our transportation services due to a rate increase. We received an increase in circuit breaker reimbursement for FY24. And lastly, in addition to the $255,000 reduction in out-of-district tuition due to the reduction of an unassigned fee, we made increases in private pay of 14% and all of our other placements of 5%. We reduced a decrease of 3 students who are changing and moving out of placements, and 1 student that was budgeted for services will no longer need those services. So before we continue, I'll just pause, ask the committee if there are any general questions about the special ed budget before we continue.
No, I'll just reiterate the point you made, which is an important one, which is that our personnel investment's actually increasing meaningfully. I know you're going to hit on the specifics of some of those priorities. So while this looks like a reduction, it is a reduction in the special education budget. It doesn't represent a reduction in the services we're providing to our students. So
Correct. Thank you.
Great. So Susan broke down just a high-level overview of just the regular day and special ed, just by cost center. We wanted to spend most of our time tonight talking about the strategic investments in the budget and actually broken down by strategic objectives, because we said a lot of the investments here aren't, as distinct as special ed and regular day, but really fit into, we think, more cleanly into our strategic objectives. So as I dive into this and set up for the rest of our team, I'd like to show we are really, as a team, excited and encouraged by the proposed budget that's in front of the committee at this point. We feel that there's a lot in this budget that will significantly improve our schools and will significantly improve the experience for our staff, for our families, and most importantly, for our students. So we are really optimistic, again, by what's included in the budget here and the impact that that's going to have on moving our district forward. So I think the community has seen our 3 strategic objectives around from our strategic plan. And then tonight what we're going to do is we're going to break down each of the strategic investments within each of these categories. So starting with 1, safe and supportive learning environment. So we have talked at length over the last couple of years, just the increase in social and emotional needs of our students, and also really at the foundation or a prerequisite for success for students in our schools is that they feel seen, they see valued, they feel connected in our schools. So it is critically important that we invest in staffing, but also in programs and structures that allow our students to feel like they belong and feel connected. And as you remember, last year, there was, the vast majority of our investments fell into that bucket. our heaviest investments were around counselors, social workers, staff, that, yes, was responsive to pandemic needs, but I think as all of us know now, these are not needs for our students that have really gone away. So again, last year, we saw a heavy investment to, we think, really build a lot of the foundation of supports for our students in schools, and you'll also see some continued investments this year as well. Where you're going to see the most investments in this proposed budget is around strategic objective 2, and that's coherent instructional systems. We see at the core of our work is ensuring that every single one of our students demonstrates excellent outcomes in our classrooms and our schools. So our strategy and our approach is to develop what we call coherent instructional systems. We have invested a lot in instruction over the past couple of years. Particularly, there's been a lot of conversations around curriculum. We believe it's really important that we invest in all sort of levers that we can pull around instructional systems, around the appropriate staffing at both the classroom level and the administration level, putting in systems that enable us to have high-quality professional development for staff, putting in the right staffing and the right systems for looking at data and responding to how our students are progressing. So we believe that what's in this budget tonight will build a lot of the infrastructure for us to be able to build out, again, a more coherent instructional system and improve the quality of teaching and learning and ultimately improve outcomes for kids. So again, the vast majority of our investments are going to be within strategic objective 2. And then lastly, you'll see the smallest investment in school ops, but of course, as we've shared, efficient operational systems are at the foundation of our success as a district. So how we're going to do this tonight is we're going to, at one at a time, we're going to speak about all of the investments in that particular strategic objective, and we're going to spend some time, a little bit more time, on the ones that have larger financial implications and ones that we think are just larger strategic investments for our district. We think a lot of the ones that we're going to speak at length about tonight are just important for our community to understand why are we making these large investments, both strategically and financially in these investments, and then what can the community expect that will look like when lived out in our schools. So with that, we'll dive into strategic objective 1, and I will turn it over to Jen.
Okay, thank you very much. We're very excited as a team to be able to present this way, because so much of our work is interconnected and not just simply budget line items. And so, for example, when we're doing a lot of our technical work with the TFM that I described, and then we're talking about program reviews, it was amazing to see how interconnected they were in some of their recommendations, and that's how we see our work as well. And so when we're thinking about our students being valued and safe and seen in schools, we know that there are some real technical fixes and processes and procedures that need to be in place with good systems and the right programming, but there's also some staff and investments in curriculum that need to happen in order to make sure that all of the students are getting what they need in terms of their services and supports while in school. So the first group of investment priorities is very, very exciting to us. When we received the ESSER funding a couple of years ago, we added positions. Those positions are now going to be able to stay and remain in our budget. So the first two were 2 secondary counselors. One of those is a guidance counselor. The other one is a counselor for stepping stones. Originally, that was an elementary position that we shifted as we had the METCO adjustment counselors at the elementary level, and now Stepping Stones has their own guidance, their own social worker. We also added a special education program teacher at the middle school level, and we were able to keep the team chairs full-time so that every elementary school has one team chair, the high school has 2, and we're really seeing the payoff in consistencies in our processes, and that we are having fewer hearing requests, and they're able to be in class more, providing some more instructional coaching and supports. One of the other big other investments is really looking at a social emotional curriculum for preschool through grade 8. We know that there's a need, and we really want to do that very intensive curriculum vetting process again, making sure that we have the right systems and that they'll align vertically to support all of our students. And with that, the high school, as part of the ESSER funding, actually had Project Wayfinder, and that is going to be able to be funded again, and they're thrilled with that and have seen great impact with that. Additionally, one of the other smaller budget items are a one-to-one nurse. This is for a student who has specific medical needs to meet the requirements of the student's plan and so that they can access school. Some of our bigger budget pieces that really we want to give more context and have a better strategic conversation are around some of the adds to our METCO program. We want to take a few minutes to really explain to you why these are important and why they're included here. So at this point, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Curtis Martin, and he's going to give a little bit more context around that.
Curtis, Sean, you might want to move it there so Mike can hear.
Oh, yeah. You'll get picked up on RCTV better if you're over here.
And the Zoom will pick it up.
Yep.
Hello?
Yeah, they should be good.
Good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year. Thanks for having me here to be able to briefly speak on, some of the things that we're doing in the district in regards to our METCO program. And it feels like just yesterday, literally yesterday, we were talking about how to build the program, and now we're already talking about year 3. I'm not sure where the time's going, but we're definitely moving, and we're moving in the right direction. I can remember my first interaction and meeting with our METCO CEO, and she had some strong words for where we were at the time. And now we're the complete opposite, where we absolutely are leading the way and doing some historic things in our district to the point where we have other directors coming to our district to shadow, to see what it is that we're doing it, how we're doing it. Every time I'm at a director's conference, it's always, how did you do that? How? Like, show us, tell us. And I'm excited to say that we're moving in that direction, and people want to know what we're doing and model it for their district, which is what I always wanted and wanted for our students here. The METCO coordinators' roles have grown, and we've seen tremendous assets to it, tremendous success to it from our students, where students are growing fond of all of our social workers, our SACs, our METCO coordinators. You can see the smiles on the kids' faces. I remember going to an after-school meeting over at Birch, and I can hear kids from the YMCA yelling, Mr. Brown, our coordinator from Ian. The relationships that our social workers have been able to build with our students has been tremendous. The supports they've been able to build for our Boston resident students has been tremendous, and to help us lead our district with our METCO core values, where all students see themselves and all students can learn about someone different. We've already seen, because of the growth of our coordinators, where some of our students who are Reading residents have gone to Boston to be with their classmates for their birthday parties, and that's something that we wanted to happen and want to continue to grow. So to continue to do this in a way where we can build a METCO SAC for our middle school, where middle school could be the toughest times for a student during their K through 12 process, is a tremendous step forward for us, and hopefully that we can make that happen to provide the supports. Mr. C, who's already there, is already making great strides at that, but to get an adjustment counselor in that role to be able to fulfill both the METCO and the social emotional needs of our students is really a great step moving forward. It's really great for the culture of a building to have an adjustment counselor, someone who can come in and be involved with kids during recess or lunch, and when a kid is having a difficult time, they feel more comfortable talking to a staff member that they have a relationship with, or that they see greeting them every day and have a strong rapport with. And that's what our counselors at all of our elementary schools have been. So even Greg, who's not a counselor, he's just a coordinator role. And to continue to grow that is a tremendous step. I couldn't have asked for anything more to build our program, to build our core values, to build these relationships, to provide that academic support for all of our students, especially our students from Boston, to provide that support for our families from Boston to be able to communicate more and feel more involved, and hopefully we can continue to push that involvement and, with after-school activities and PTO, and really make our Boston families feel like this is their home, and our Reading residents and students embracing each other, building strong relationships. With this role potentially happening, opening and moving over to the middle school, this would allow us to transition Mr. C into a high school role where I believe is really, really needed. Our high school students have been there since first grade, kindergarten, and I'm hearing from them, seeing it in their eyes and the face, there is a burnout stage. There's a burnout stage that I experienced as a student who had a really good experience. I had a really good experience, and I've told you all multiple times about that. But you can see I had a really tough year and a half, and that was the year we didn't have a coordinator, MECO coordinator that looked like me, that I could relate to. And that struggle was real. It showed in my transcript. In the moment we were able to bring on someone to replace the person who had left us, I instantly changed. And I could see that and hear that from the voices of our high school students who's just looking for someone that looks like them that they can talk to. And not just this role, many other roles. And then also to build this role with our high school students, to be able to bring the students together and continue to do more, cultural events where everyone's learning from each other, continuing to build those bonds and making sure that everyone's going to a Friday night football game and having fun and being there for that academic support as well for our students, to be an extra support for our teachers and our counselors to help our students of color from Boston and from Reading to meet the needs and their goals and go on to college and be successful. So I feel I'm extremely excited. I can't express enough how many times I've heard from other directors, what we're doing is historic, and people wanting to see exactly what it is we're doing so that they can model in our district. And the biggest winners of this all is the kids. So I'm excited for the growth in our program and just our district as a whole. And I know I'm scheduled to come back to talk a little bit more in depth at a later time, but I'm excited to do that as well. Thank you.
Go ahead, Tom.
May not be a question for Curtis, maybe more for you all, but as a point of technical clarification, we're not adding 2 METCO people, right? We're moving the middle school current METCO coordinator to the high school, and we're adding 1 coordinator slash adjustment counselor, right? So budget impact really is half ahead, essentially, as part of this move, because the other half is covered by the METCO grant.
Correct.
Correct. Thank you.
But there will only be one position to be shared by both middle schools.
Yes.
So I'll ask the follow-up. Is the goal to get another position for the middle schools?
To go, yeah, I think if we can get to a point where we have a coordinator at every school, that would be a tremendous win for us. I think somewhere down the line, that would be the goal, to try to figure out how we can make that happen.
Go ahead.
Just building on that, I asked Dr. Milcheski this too, but I'll ask you, because you might have more direct line into the METCO coordination in the city. There is, can we do that by expanding the program even more? Is there an option for us to go from the 104, 105 we have now to 120, 130?
Yep.
That just continues to build the program and moves us up that list of top 10 schools of.
Yeah. I think
Had that conversation as well. So
Yep.
what's that next step and how do we support that?
So I'm pretty positive like that would be the next step in figuring out how to continue to grow the program student-wise, because when we grow this program student-wise, then the grant will increase. And the grant increase would allow me to hire more staff and get more busing to get students here, participate in after-school programs, where we've seen even last year immediately kids were in the school plays at Parker and even at Coolidge as well. So the more that we grow with the students, the more the grant will grow to allow us to be more flexible and provide those resources to our students.
I'm going to go Chuck first, and then you can.
So you started to answer what I was going to ask, and if you know, and you might not know tonight, how does that formula work when we increase?
So it's per student. Susan, do you remember how? I just know it's per student. There's money allotted per student from the grant, and that money from per student allows us to add the busing and any type of extra events or curriculum stuff that we would like to add, after school programming.
So can I continue?
Sure, yeah.
So by adding positions, we're not necessarily going to see more money in the grant. It's by adding students to it.
Yeah, so when we add students, we'll get more money for the grant. And with this role right now, when we're adding the staff member, that does not mean that more students are coming with it. I believe our range is between 103 and 110 where we can be at. And even with that, every year is reviewed, DESE will increase. So if we stayed at let's say we got to 110 for 3 years, that's our average, then DESE would increase the grant to support that. But if we wanted to do something bigger, we would formally have to do, just like last year, submit that to DESE, tell them how many students we want to increase, how we could support that, and what we would need to support that financially.
I'll add one thing too, is that when we expanded last year too, there's also the opportunity for the METCO expansion grant, which was, you remember, was METCO's largest expansion in recent history, which also came with one-time funding for that expansion as well. So it not only gave us the per pupil increase from the 63 to the 103, but it also came with additional one-time funding too. So in conversations with Curtis and with Millie, we don't see yet or know about another METCO expansion sort of opportunity that would also give that additional funding in addition to the per pupil increase that you would get by adding in additional students.
The per pupil's on the order of about 8,000 per student.
Right.
I guess what I'm hearing though is that there is a means to make a proposal in METCO so that we could potentially get funds other than what we would normally get.
Correct.
That's good to know.
Tom, go ahead.
So you mentioned transportation as part of that. You may be aware, and the rest of the committee is aware, that we've heard feedback from the students that the transportation is a bit of a challenge here at the high school in particular for activity participation, sports, cheer, drama, whatever else the case may be, as well as summer participation in those kind of pre-school type stuff. Have you heard that yet yourself? And if so, have you had a chance to consider what that might mean from a busing or transportation perspective? Or is that something you'd have to take back and look at a little bit more?
Yeah, so coming in last year, that was one of the biggest challenges. And when we were able to do the grant, the increase, that allowed us to add the late buses. So we are now at we started with just 2 days a week. Now we're Monday through Thursday, 4 days a week. That expansion also allowed us to have a bus for ESY for the first time this summer, where we had students come and do ESY here. It's also allowed us to do specialty buses for football games and home football games and basketball games, where students were able to come and participate in a late bus bus that came even later than the normal bus. It also allowed us to, it allowed us to shorten the ride for high school students because we added a third bus. So by separating middle school students and high school students, that the grant allowed us to do that, and adding a third bus. So now, our students coming from Boston, they're getting up almost an hour later than what they were. They have about an hour ride here, which is almost the equivalent to any kid who lives in the city and has to try, depending on where you live, have to go to Madison Park in Roxbury or Brighton High or Southie or Charlestown by MBTA. It's almost faster for them now by changing and adding those buses to allow that. So we was able to make significant strides with that. I hope I answered your question with that.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, definitely you've done a ton of work in that space, right? I just want to clarify my point or my question a little bit. The 2 points that you left out are the points that we've heard feedback on so far, right? Fridays, especially activities on Fridays when it's not like a football game.
Yep.
Right? If you have a cheer game or if you're not in one of the major, right, band is an issue, right? So that type of one was the Friday night issue. So hopefully we can expand that to support a little bit more universally. But the other one is summer, right? So we're here, kids are brought back to start with summer practices for football, soccer, et cetera, in like the second week of August.
Yep.
School doesn't start until the end of August.
Yep.
So we heard stories about kids having to take, the MBTA out to Oak Grove and have somebody hopefully pick them up in Oak Grove to get them here for practice.
Right,
Then go
right.
back to the MBTA. And so is that something you're aware of, and is that something we can potentially tackle?
Yep, I left that out. And we actually did this year have a bus for fall sports that started in August. So students were able to come out to participate in practice, both cheerleading, football. We even used that bus for orientations for the middle schools and high school. We were able to do that. I'm sorry, I left that part out.
It's okay.
We may have had an awareness gap this past summer then, if that was the case, because that was a piece of feedback that we got just last month, so.
Yep. So, we were able to make that happen this school year with the help of the expansion.
So let this share as we kind of close out this part too. On the 19th, Curtis is going to come back and speak a little bit about the METCO update, but also specifically to talk about the roles that we've rolled out new at the elementary level, the METCO coordinator / school adjustment counselors. As we shared, we're excited, I think, anecdotally about some of the initial impact that this has had, particularly in the school counseling space for our students. We think it's important, given these are new roles, for Curtis and the rest of his team to come out and share what are some of the data that we have to show that these roles are making impact on students, and also two, what are we doing to continue to define these roles as we move forward? So only 6 months in these roles, we know there's a lot of work to do to continue to fully maximize these roles. So he'll be coming to speak a little bit about that on the 19th too. So obviously, if we've had enough, positive feedback that we are encouraged to build up to the middle school level, but we still think it's important to give the community an update of where we stand and why we're building up, and that'll happen on the 19th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was all sort of strategic objective 1. I don't know if we want to pause there or if we just kind of want to move through the rest and then pause for questions at the end.
I think we can keep going. Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. I'm excited to talk with you and to introduce some of our guest speakers tonight to share information about strategic objective number 2, coherent instructional systems. I think you've heard us say many times that in order for us to be a district really that supports excellence for our students, we need to ensure that that is equitable, that each and every student who attends Reading Public Schools has access to very strong outcomes through high-quality instruction and support from their teachers. And so I'm excited tonight to share with you some investments that we believe will support the ongoing work in our district to reach equity and excellence, and then also will take us to the next step for our students. So the first few priorities here, the financial impact is a little bit lower, so I'll go through those somewhat quickly. You'll see listed that we are going to decrease the full-day kindergarten tuition from $3,600 to $2,650. This is part of our ongoing commitment to eventually eliminating the fee so that all of our students can attend full-day kindergarten tuition-free. And so this takes us a step closer to that. The next item that you'll see here is the addition of an elementary learning center teacher. And this comes out of our work. We constantly monitor the caseloads. We gather the caseloads of our special education teachers, and we monitor them. And here we found a spot where we needed to decrease the caseload in a particular school, and so the special education teacher is being added in order to maintain equitable caseloads. The Seal of Biliteracy is a program that we launched this year, and what that does, it allows our students to take an assessment that assesses their proficiency in a language other than English. This year, all students in 8th grade and 11th grade who are enrolled in a world language class will be taking that assessment. We also did open it up this past December to any 12th grade students who were interested in trying to qualify for the Seal of Biliteracy. And just as a little preview, we did have some students that did qualify. So at graduation this year, we will be able to award our first Seals of Biliteracy. We also offered that this year to any of our heritage-speaking students who might want to have the opportunity to earn that. Not only do the language proficiency assessments allow us to give students that Seal of Biliteracy at graduation, but they also improve the ability of our world language teachers to understand how students are progressing in the world language standards, which are proficiency-based. And so next year, we're proposing to expand the use of the assessment here at Reading Memorial High School. And instead of just assigning it to another grade, like 10th grade or 9th grade, instead, the world language department will look across the courses. Many of our world language courses have students from multiple grades enrolled in them. So instead, as a team, we'll determine the best points along a student's trajectory in world language to utilize those assessments to provide the Seal of Biliteracy opportunity, but also to monitor student progress and our programming. So it's a really exciting expansion for our world language department. The next thing here that I want to fill you in on is just a slight expansion of the stipends for our mentoring program. As you may know, currently in Reading, our year one teachers and staff receive a one-to-one mentor, and we have a really strong mentoring program in place, and it is a great support for people to learn, for our new staff, not only to learn about the district, but to have a go-to and someone that can help them acclimate to their role. In looking at the program requirements and really what we want to provide our staff, we would like to expand that to have the mentoring increase to include year two as well. The Department of Education does require us to provide 50 hours of mentoring in over years 2 and even into 3 for staff that have not earned their professional license yet. So this will enable us to do that. And I also just believe it will provide a better experience for staff coming into our schools, which we believe is really important in order to retain the high-quality staff that we're able to hire. The final item on here that has a smaller monetary implications is the curriculum content reviews. This actually encompasses 3 different reviews that we would like to run next year. One of those reviews is currently underway, our middle school literacy leadership team. We believe that we will extend that curriculum review into next year. And next year, we'd like to launch a science curriculum review for our middle and high school levels. And then world language, actually, we'd like to perform a curriculum review there, starting with grade 7 up through 12. As you've heard from previous presentations, when we've presented on this type of work, people hear curriculum content review, they think right away we're talking about buying materials, and this really is a much broader, holistic look at the standards being taught, the instructional methods being employed with those standards, the materials being used, how we're assessing student progress, the vertical and horizontal alignment. So it really is the whole picture of curriculum and instruction. And so the review team for those 3 areas will be comprised of our Reading teachers and leadership to take a comprehensive look at the whole package for curriculum, and then those teams from there will make recommendations. Recommendations can lead to the purchase of curricular materials. They also can lead to recommendations for professional development, as well as shifts in instructional methodology and additional assessments. So really excited to launch that work next year.
Dr. Hardy, on that, just on that one quickly, I think there's like a $30,000 line item attached to that. What does that spending actually represent? Is it
Excellent
stipends or what is that?
Yes, excellent question. So, yes, we do provide a stipend for the leadership teams. All of the work is done outside of school, so we provide them a stipend for their time. In addition, if there are materials that we do want to pilot or try out, very often there is a fee to purchase those. Depending on what you're piloting, companies may provide you with free materials, but often they will not, especially if it's something that involves some type of subscription. So that's reserving the funds we believe would be necessary to kind of get our hands on anything that we might need. It also could include a cost for training, because one of the pieces that's really important for that leadership team is that they are learning and growing their practice as we engage in the work, so that they are sort of at the forefront of understanding for whatever content area that is as to what research shows and what the best instructional practices are.
Thank you. Chuck, go ahead.
So, first of all, I want to say I really like the addition of the mentoring program. I think that's an area where we've probably fallen short in previous years, and I really am excited about this. And my question is, and I think I know the answer, but is it available to all, or people that teachers that you've decided may need it?
It is available to all of our new staff entering. It's anybody who's teaching under the RTA contract receives a mentor.
No, for the first year, I'm talking about for
year two?
For year two.
That's a good question. So technically, we would offer first to staff who do not have their professional license. So that means that they're still within their first 3 years of teaching.
Right.
Often, we do have staff that come into Reading who are experienced and seasoned teachers. And so that year one mentor is really helpful in acclimating them to a new district so they understand the routines and the practices. They may not need that mentoring going forward because they're already established in their career. Really, the year two mentor is intended for staff who are still pursuing that professional license as they're still early in their teaching career.
Thank you.
Can I dig a little bit into the curriculum content stuff?
Please.
So first of all, thank you for the explanation. I think that answers a lot of questions I've been hearing from people, but I just want to dig into the questions a little bit more in that front. In particular, world language. So you may or may not know, you probably do know, that we purchased a whole heck of a lot of curriculum in the world language space just 2 years ago at this point in time. So I'm assuming, but I don't want to assume, that your focus is more on the vertical alignment and, you know, the instructional practices and things along those lines, as opposed to potentially purchasing again a new set of curriculum, which theoretically were purchased at that point in time to be in line with the new standards in 2021. So if you could expand a little bit on that, or whether it's, you know, we're doing French instead of Spanish, or, you know, Latin, because nobody's looked at Latin in so many years, or whatever else the case may be, if you can expand a little bit more on the segregation of world language and what that is versus what was done in 2021.
Yes, happy to answer that question. Thank you. It's a great question. So world language, so there's many reasons why a content area might be activated for a curriculum review cycle. And one of them is when new curriculum frameworks are published by DESE. And in this case, not too long ago, a year or two ago, new world language standards came out. One of the big shifts in the most current the current frameworks is a shift in how world language is assessed and the instructional methodology that's used to teach world language. And they're both pretty significant shifts. As I was mentioning when I was talking about the sale of biliteracy, that proficiency testing in world language it demonstrates part of that shift. So instead of a focus on sort of assessing students along the way with just vocabulary and word use, really the shift of the frameworks is now to look at how are students able to functionally use the language. And so that means that teachers are need to shift their assessment practices. So instead of giving a traditional grammar quiz or translating sentences, instead they need to create opportunities where students functionally use that world language. So the purpose of this curriculum review really is to look at our instructional practices and our assessment practices and to align those vertically 7 through 12. We have outstanding world language teachers, and many of them have already dived in to start playing around with these new ways of assessing and new ways of teaching. I've seen some really incredible lessons. I was in Leah Christie's World Spanish class up at Parker, and she had this amazing activity where students had to work collaboratively to build a picture. They couldn't see the other person's picture. So they had like a real motivation to use language, and they were, of course, pulling on the vocabulary they were practicing. So an example like that is a shift in how world language instruction would support student use of language. So this curriculum review team would look at what are the practices we have in place, how do those need to be shifted. My guess is that flowing from that will be recommendations for professional development, perhaps an even further increase of an assessment system, and but not necessarily a shift in the materials we purchase, perhaps just training on how to use those materials and how they fit with the new standards.
Thank you.
Erin.
The second year teacher mentorship, is the idea that they would have the same mentor for 2 years?
Yeah, we haven't quite built the program out yet, but my initial thinking is if it's a good relationship, because trust is such an important part of that relationship and building common experiences. So I think having that mentor for 2 years would be a really positive impact for both individuals.
I was going to say, do you have any difficulty finding teachers who want to take on that role or that additional responsibility, or is it something they enjoy?
For the most part, no. I mean, our teachers really understand the value, I think, and want to connect with each other. One of the struggles we've had sometimes is we've added like so many behavioral health staff that we've doubled the amount of staff, so finding existing staff to act as mentors has been a little challenging, but just because of the sheer number and the difference.
Can I ask one other question?
Sure.
I missed something you said about the Learning Center teacher. Is it essentially that based on the number of students who require time in the Learning Center, we need an additional teacher to meet that need?
Yes, when we look at caseloads, we look at not only the total number of students, but how they're grouped, their grade levels, et cetera. So when
Right.
you're thinking about a schedule, as far as what would be equitable across special education teachers, so that students really receive the services that are required by their IEPs, we determined we needed another teacher.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
And that's at Joshua Eaton, correct?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, Learning Center, Joshua Eaton, lead. So are we going to hire or focus on hiring somebody who also could help in lead if staffing needs required that? Or is this going to be purely and only Learning Center and never the two shall cross?
I'm going to ask Dr. Stice to chime in on that one.
So we've been really focusing on making sure any staff we hire has the background in training in reading assessment and then matching curricular opportunities. We've also continued to do a lot of professional development around opportunities to learn new programming. For example, we just offered the Wilson course for a great number of our staff. So anybody we hire in that role could be able to support if they are needed, but right now we have 2 teachers and 2 para-educators for that program, and looking at their numbers, they are able to service the students appropriately.
Just to, not concerned about that, because I think the teachers and paras of that program are awesome, but I'm concerned about always planning for potential attrition or anything else along those lines. Somebody gets sick for a long time, somebody goes out on maternity leave, or paternity leave, as the case may be,
So that's one of the reasons why we're really trying to build the capacity of our staff, that people are trained in multiple programs and are knowledgeable in different programming that will support a variety of learners, so that we do have that flexibility in grouping and understanding.
So it sounds like it's not going to be a requirement or a job requirement necessarily, but an option for them to train into.
Some of it will be a job requirement in terms of understanding the reading and the brain and the processes and assessment. Also, we've trained all the elementary staff in Ravo, middle school and high school staff in Language Live. Those things will be requirements. Something like Wilson that takes an entire year graduate course and lots of after-school work, that's something they'd have to opt into.
Okay.
But we'll continue to offer a variety of training experiences and make sure people have those understandings.
Thank you.
Okay, now that we're through the small ones.
All right. Thank you for those thoughtful questions. So I'm excited about all of the items that I just discussed with you. There are some items on this list, though, that have larger financial impact and I think deserve a little bit more individualized attention. So we do have some staff on hand who have helped us in the process of determining which of these items to bring forward. The first group that we have is actually joining us online, and our elementary principals are here. We're going to ask them to chat a little bit about why we've listed elementary assistant principals, 5 in total, 1 for each of our elementary schools in this year's budget, which is a large financial commitment, but we believe is really essential to upholding all of the work that is going on. You hear us speak quite frequently, as recently as my report tonight, about the significant implementation that is underway. We know that the work of an elementary principal right now in education is more complex than ever. Just to give a tiny bit of context, this is from an article in 1990, only about a quarter of elementary schools had an assistant principal, and in 2015 it was up to more than half having an assistant principal at the elementary level, and that was pre-pandemic. And so we know that the work that our building principals undertake right now has so many layers to it, and really if we want to leverage the things that we have started to put in place for our students and to ensure that we're able to maximize the investments we've made, adding this layer of instructional leadership is really what we feel is needed. So the principals are going to share a little bit more about how they would envision this role and how it really would support all of our staff, our students, and our families.
Can you all hear me okay?
We can.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So I am speaking on behalf of the elementary principals, but my team is here with me, so they will be chiming in as we kind of speak through these bullet points. And as Sarah alluded to, these are broad overviews. So of course we could go into more detail to each thing, but we really are excited that this is a discussion point for us and something that we have been advocating for quite a few years, and the pandemic certainly put more pressure to really think about the whole child and the whole system for our schools. And we saw the impact that schools have on the community and kind of the multi-layers that we're dealing with. And so, to kind of speak broadly at first, of course, we could go into a lot of details about the management and operational tasks, which we chose to kind of decrease what that looks like on. We know day to day having somebody in the building would be helpful, but it's really the impact that this is going to have on our educators, and then directly the impact it will have on our students that we think is most important. And so, we've been spending a lot of time as a district thinking about our rigorous instructional strategies and curriculum, as well as our sense of belonging. And so, the role of an assistant principal will really support that. Directly, we know that it will expand our instructional leadership team within our school, having a second individual there who really can become knowledgeable in the professional development, in the curriculum, in the direct and explicit coaching and feedback given to our teachers, is then going to build the capacity for our teachers. We're going to have more time in the classrooms with multiple people where we can really see, observe, put plans in place, think about what structures do we need to support our teachers in building their understanding. We've talked a lot about how in elementary, we become experts in upwards of 7 curriculum on a daily basis. And so we really want to be able to provide that feedback to our teachers that they deserve, and the opportunities to learn that they deserve. And to do that as one person is really challenging when you're talking about 20+ classrooms in a school, and the nuances that come with a whole group of children that are in front of you. So the more that we can do that, the more we can provide that. That means that we're giving feedback to our teachers to build them, which will then go back and increase their practices and their impact on the kids. And we anticipate, and the research supports that means our kids will have that, more in the moment coaching also from the teachers because of that feedback loop that's happening. So we do see this as a really great opportunity for our kids to feel an impact of an additional instructional leader in the building, our teachers certainly to feel that way, as well as our community as a whole. So one of the things that's come up, of course, is that as we grow in our understanding of our demographics and as we grow in our understanding of what our kids need, it means that we're really reaching out to build and bridge these partnerships within our school community, within our families. We really want everyone to feel like they have a place in our school and that they're seen and heard. And one way to do that is to, again, have an assistant principal who can help with that by being a liaison between the community and what the families are needing. So that direct kind of visibility and partnership piece that is really challenging to do when you're one person. I think this just increases that capacity for us and really allows us to expand what we think about as a whole child or whole systems approach to supporting our kids. The other thing we get a lot of feedback on, and I'm sure you all have heard this as a school committee, is that at an elementary level, if you at this point want to grow in your leadership capacities, it means you're looking elsewhere. We're not retaining our individuals who are really thriving for a leadership opportunity in our schools. And an assistant principal will certainly increase that pipeline for us, allow opportunities for people to, try that administrative role and really see if this is working for them, and maybe lead to even more district level, learning opportunities for our staff as they think about coaching and other direct reports. But we certainly want to allow our teachers who are looking for that kind of next step or that way to leverage their voice to be able to grow that internally. And this is just a great opportunity for us to do that. And as I just said, that idea of that retention piece that we've really been working on, the more we can say, this matters, and the more we can say that, allowing teachers to grow and nurture their own love, the better it's going to benefit our kids as well as our entire community. In terms of our evaluation system, we've spoken about this before in previous years of the budget. As principals, we're responsible for evaluating pretty much all of the staff in our building, including our paraeducators. So our feedback that we're giving is not as constant as we would love it to be because we are one person. So we are looking at 50 to 70 reports, depending on your school, that are going directly to the principal. And so having this shared leadership, building that capacity with somebody else, having a thought partner to really think about, what is it that we're seeing when we go through our walkthroughs, which means we're walking into classrooms to see what's the curriculum look like, are kids engaged, how are we doing these pieces? The more that we can do that with other people and have that collaborative dialogue and kind of share and our brain power, and if nothing else, that will just benefit, again, the teachers as well as our kids, because it will help us focus our vision more and be more efficient in the way we're giving feedback and how quickly we're able to do that in the most appropriate manner. So that's very exciting to us. I think, kind of the last piece of this idea of collaboration between our groups of teachers and staff, again, the more we're thinking about those decision-making processes and the shared leadership and building up our instructional models, the more it means we need that collaborative time. And to do that effectively, we want to have people who can really bring about change and bring about ideas to the forefront. And the assistant principal will help us to do that, help us expand kind of our thought process on what that looks like. And I think this is just going to allow us to really open up and think about what are our kids telling us they need on a daily basis? How visible can we be as a school community and, responding to that? And an additional administrator in the building will allow us to do that. It is certainly one way to do it, but it's shown effectively in other communities. And so we're really excited about that opportunity. I don't know, team, if there's anything else that really comes to your mind as we're talking this through that you want to share. But otherwise, we're certainly happy to answer any questions or reiterate anything that is helpful for the committee right now.
Go ahead.
So you can't see, but I think all of our elementary principals are on their call.
You might be able to adjust the view over there so you
Yeah,
can see them.
let me, there we go. All right. Go ahead, Carla.
So, thank you, Sarah. So I think I can speak for the whole committee and say we're really excited about these roles and know how important it is. Just in listening to this presentation, I guess initially, I just want to have an understanding more of like how it gets rolled out and the consistency of it. Is it, I think initially we heard of the principal needs to be an instructional leader, right? And we need somebody to handle the operations. But this presentation makes it seem like we're almost trying to clone the principal, right? And have that person take part in all the aspects. Is that the direction, one? And two, is that something that's going to kind of be uniform moving forward for all positions?
Great question. So if we all answer that, we probably all answer that slightly different at this point. And I think that that's the reality of sort of where we are in the process, right? I think the shared understanding of all of us now is the complexity of the principal role and the flexibility that this additional administrator in the building could give us in a lot of ways. Something that we're doing now, as you know, we partnered with Salem State this year to support their ILT work. We're also partnering with Salem State as part of, they're kind of supporting our team to help think through what are all the things that we need to think through this, the layers of rolling out this model. One of them is how are you defining this AP role? Now, I've cited a couple of times the Wallace Foundation sort of report on the impact of principal leadership. There's actually a similar study around assistant principal leadership that was released in 2021, I believe. And it's interesting, they say that there's not a lot out there yet around like the impact of an assistant principal. Yet when they've seen situations where it is more effective in having a bigger impact on students, it's where it's more tightly defined. So we haven't a team yet decided, do we, for example, at Barrows, do we select someone who has more of a background with working with social emotional needs? Do we flex a little differently at maybe a school like Wood End that's a little bit smaller, right? That maybe, do we have it a little bit different at, Killam, where we're having an increase in our multilingual learner population? Do we, choose someone who can handle more of the operational side that frees the principal up to then handle more of the instructional leadership work? Or do you choose someone side by side who can be leading the instructional leadership work with the principals? So I should also say we haven't got to that phase of mapping that out. And to be honest, I have a hard time believing that it's going to be like a similar profile across all of the schools. Even internally, we know we have a lot of teachers who are really interested and teachers who bring very different things. We have teachers who are very excited about content and about being in classrooms and being an instructional leader. Others who have a background more in operational work, logistics, management. So I think that's work that we have to do as a team. So I share all that to say I don't have a quick answer yet. And it's in these roles, it's impossible to believe that they're not going to sort of carry on sort of all of that work as well. Principals, feel free to jump in if you have like an initial read on that. I know we haven't gone too deep in that.
I think that's a very fair statement to make, and I think as we continue to focus on the professional development for our teachers, one of the things we're really doing is thinking about our professional development as principals. So we're participating in our core literacy training, professional development, as well as the illustrative math curriculum. So I think that there would be opportunities no matter what for the assistant principal to be a part of those dialogues and discussions just by nature of how an elementary school works and how if you're evaluating or giving feedback or participating in that, you really need to know the curriculum well anyway. So I think it would be a collaborative piece. Certainly there would be operational pieces that would be shared or expanded. I think there are things we simply cannot do right now because of capacity. So I agree. I think it's a little bit dependent upon the unique needs of the school, but I think we would come to at least a skeletal, situation where we'd be able to say in every school, we're kind of looking at it this way. And then we kind of go off of what we're seeing as needs within the school itself.
Chuck.
So one more thing, we are also not setting ourselves up for success if we don't build the instructional leadership skills of our assistant principals. If we're viewing this as a pipeline of talent, yet we view this role as someone who's just going to handle operations and logistics, that doesn't effectively build the pipeline that we're trying to build to. So there inherently has to be instructional leadership built into this role as well.
Chuck.
So, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. I had a similar observation as Carla, and, in full disclosure, I'm showing my age, I guess. I had it more of a black and white. You had an operational person and a curriculum type person running the building. But now that I've seen this presentation, I think it makes a lot more sense, and thank you for the, for sharing that it's not black and white. It is going to be different. One question I did also have was, how do you envision, and maybe it's too early for this too, but how do you envision recruiting for this? Is it going to be, are we going to really try to look in-house first, or is this something we're going to go out and if you're not ready to answer that, I get it. I'm just, I have my own opinion on it, but.
Yeah. So just two quick, the short answer, we're not ready to answer it fully, but I'll give you a little under the hood sort of answer where we're thinking. That's one of the things that Salem State said right away, is we have to sort of make a decision on that. I would say, and I think all of us in this room feel strongly that this is an opportunity for us to invest in the staff that we have in our district. So while we likely, we don't know sort of what the interest will be fully, sort of what the process will be. We have a hard time envisioning how, a lot of these roles will not be filled by people that we have in the district. And that's our hope.
Thank you.
Yeah, these will not all fill external candidates.
Aaron?
So to piggyback on that, anticipating that at least some, if not all, 5 positions could be filled internally, does that impact when you start the process? Because then we would have teacher hires that we need, and we want to make sure that we're advertising our teacher positions at the optimal time when, prime candidates are searching for a job for next year.
Correct. There's no advantage for us going slower on this. This is something that we need to, as soon as we move forward, the budget sort of approval here from the school committee, we need to move forward ASAP with job descriptions, strategies on, postings, internal versus external. How are we having a interview process where it starts with, central office vetting, then they go to schools? Do we allow schools to sort of open it up individually? All of those things that we need to figure out right away. The quicker we settle that in, the longer runway we have to build out these roles with the actual people who will be sitting in them, and the pick of the, the candidates we want to backfill those positions. So you're spot on.
Can I just make a comment? I agree. This is a position that I've heard talk about the need for years. And I remember the first time I heard it, I thought, when are we ever going to find the money to do that? Great idea, great concept. I understand the need, but, where are we going to find the money? So kudos to Susan, who has a miraculous ability to find money. And kudos to all of you for making this happen, because I do think this is a really impactful role for your schools. So I'm, Carla was right. I think she speaks for the committee that we're very excited about this opportunity for you, for our teachers, for our schools.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Pile on.
I'm going to pile on real quick, just to make sure that's clear. I'm not excited, I'm ecstatic, so if that makes any difference. But I'm ecstatic for a couple of reasons. One is the 5 of you and your ability to engage even more deeply in some of the learning you're already engaging in. You won't have all the distractions all the time. You'll have half the distractions, right? So that frees up a little bit of bandwidth. As a result, I'm excited or ecstatic and hopeful that means that retention of the 5 of you will continue to go up and stay, right? As we built this team back up again, I hope it continues to stay together. But in addition to that, the building of the pipeline to potentially replace you, if you all move on to bigger and better things, if that were to happen, means that we're putting in place a pipeline that has never existed in this district before. And their ability to engage in the learning that's possible as part of that administrative leadership team as well is hugely important. Whether that becomes an assistant principal or, the coach, which is our next conversation, is to be determined, but I'm excited for that. We talked about that as a committee probably 2 or 3 years ago about we need more opportunities for our own people to move up the stack. And this is enabling that, and then some. So the only thing I'll say is, Dr. Milczewski, we probably need to figure out where and how we're going to engage Salem with the next 5 assistant principals, because that's not listed here, right? They're bringing them into the role without bringing the coaching for them is something we need to figure out. That's a gap, as I see this, that we should probably look at and see what does that look like for Salem State next year. And whether that's with the 5 of them continuing and 5 more, or whether it's just the 5 new assistant principals or whatever that is. You know, new people in a new role without training is a problem that we need to address. So I'd like us to think about what that looks like, what the cost might be, whether our existing people are the right people. I think you guys have a really strong relationship with them from everything I see. But I think it's something we should make sure we're enabling them to participate in that kind of training as well.
You cited something else that was pretty on the front of that research as well, which is saying that if you throw these roles in without clearly defining them and giving them ongoing coaching, mentorship, and support, you're setting them up for failure. So, agreed.
Big thumbs up from me, too. Okay,
You're getting smiles from them, too.
all right. Okay,
Dr. King said at the end of her last meeting, find a way to get assistant principals. So now we've listened to Dr. King. as well.
Dr. King is not here, not by choice. Dr. King is at the PTN meeting for RISE from 7:30 to 8:30. So she said if we were before or after, she would come and give her perspective. So she was very eager to come and present tonight, too. So I'm sure she'll make an appearance again to share her thoughts on this.
she can go to town meeting.
Town meeting.
Yeah, don't ever count her out. She'll be back.
Ready for
Yeah, let's,
Excellent, excellent. I'd love to invite Erin Burchell and Heather Leonard to come up to speak to the next item that's listed here. This is our K to 8 math coaches. We are looking to hire 2 math coaches. That would be K to 8. And just really the start of this really impactful professional development structure that Erin and Heather will fill you in on why we propose these as really a high leverage tool in supporting our staff.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. We're really excited to be here to share some information about the proposal of introducing K-8 mathematics coaches. Before we launch into the math lens of it, we wanted to give an introduction into this idea of why instructional coaches at all. But I actually want to introduce my colleague, Erin Burchell, who I understand has not yet had a chance to come to one of the formal meetings. So my partner in crime, the humanities coordinator this year, and it's been really wonderful learning so much from her and all of the rich experience she's bringing to our district. We were really lucky, especially given that she has professional experience as an instructional coach. So even though her focus is within the humanities field, she's even in these initial conversations thinking about what does it look like to bring this professional learning structure into our district. She's already been incredibly insightful. So I'm going to pass it to Erin to start us off.
It's a really nice debut. Thank you. Thanks for having us. We really appreciate it. I want to talk a little bit about instructional coaching in terms of a professional learning structure system that we can bring to Reading in the form of K-8 coaches. So coaching really advances educator ability to apply what they're learning in their classrooms, right? So this really is an investment in our teachers and our students. It's job embedded. It's right there. It goes right into our structure that we already have in place. Really promotes collaboration between teachers and coaches, between teacher teams. Coaches can absolutely work with teachers within a team, across teams, so it absolutely promotes a lot of collaboration. The K-8 math coaches would be content focused, which is really great because you'd be able to focus in on that specific content area as opposed to going and having to do a whole lot of different content work. And models both good pedagogical practices and also good data practices as well. That's something coaches can do and should do. But I think really it just makes everything coherent and connected, right? So we've invested a lot into our curricular resources, our new curricular frameworks, and this is really just a continuation to make sure the learning and growth continues in a way to do it in-house and really provide a structure in Reading to do that with our teachers. It's just such a huge support to teachers, a huge support for students. To have someone working on teaching and learning right alongside teachers. Heather's going to talk more about the math focus, but I just wanted to touch base on that a little bit.
And I think the benefit that we've also seen that Erin's been able to pick her brain a lot as we've started to draft the planning for this is the implementation with ARC came with coaching embedded in their professional learning package. And so seeing that ability of teachers say like, wow, I'm really struggling with this, and then that next week have somebody at their door with expertise and resources to say, I heard this is a challenge, here we go. I mean, that type of support loop is really incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing with the ARC coaching, these are folks that are coming from ARC into our schools, but they're school-based people, so the coaches are school site specific. And even though they're only around about once a month, you can see the relationships with teachers already being built. And that's the thing with having in-house instructional coaches that is really important, right? Coaching is really about relationship building, about trust, so that teachers can take risks, can ask questions, can be supported. So it's really about building those relationships, and if we have that in-house, we can just continue to build the trust, build the relationships between teachers and coaches. It'll be really, really strong, really strong. Can we go to the next slide?
So I guess the next question I want to talk about is the why now. As we're thinking about this proposal of instructional learning, I really want to frame the coaches, while we're talking about them as individuals, I really see it as a professional learning structure. And as we're thinking about how are we integrating professional learning into a norm, the way we advance our own practice, and that's just something that good educators do, is we learn more, we grow more, we experience more about the research in the field, we learn from each other, we learn from our students, and that's just the way that the job goes. We continue to grow. We're really well poised in mathematics to do that now. So we've just completed that review process that's really led us to look district-wide at our curricular resources. And you see that visual there. You may remember these steps of that: learning and preparing, investigating, selecting, launching our curriculum, which were the tail end of that red's right there. So we're in that launch of our early elementary, and really we're into this idea of implementing and monitoring. So we've invested a significant amount of time and resources, energy and money into these high quality curricular materials. So now it's our responsibility to make sure that those are continued to be implemented with integrity. And when I say curriculum materials, I really want to talk about curriculum as a whole. When we say curriculum, we include your methodology, the way we're teaching, those routines we use, the assessment systems that we use, responding to student need, the use of the instructional routines, that predictable routine within a math class so that students' experience becomes really cohesive throughout. So that, in order to continue that and maintain that integrity, that requires that ongoing support. And that's really a big critical role that our coaches will play for all of our educators in the mathematical content area. So we've adopted those high quality curriculum materials. We've had some of the introductory training, so our teachers have that understanding of what it is, what am I trying to do, and now it's a matter of now that I'm in it, okay, this is working well, how do I replicate it, how do I get others to come and see it? This is where I'm struggling, what do I do, how can I solve this, what resources or support do I need? And that's really that sweet spot for our timing of why we're really well poised to do that work. And in fact, a lot of the research that's out there will show that coaching in itself can have an incredible impact, but when paired with that sort of content training and paired with high quality curriculum materials, that impact just grows and grows. So we're timed perfectly to do that in mathematics. And then can we do the next slide? So as we think really explicitly about what the K-8 math coaches would do, there's a lot of components of this that really go into that idea of being that, as Erin said, that job-embedded professional learning, that resource and that, honestly, the builder of the network that allows our teachers to learn with each other, from each other, and from folks that might be beyond their building and their department. Within the first few years, I see these roles potentially taking the opportunity to work with all of our staff through doing some, larger group work, some smaller group targeted work, and then some one-on-one. So for example, some of the professional learning we've done this year with our staff in grades 3 through 8 has included, I mentioned to you all, the learning labs. So that we had a coach come in, they modeled a lesson, the teachers got together, what worked, what didn't, what could we do differently? The teachers go in and try it. So it's a deep examination of our practices and those instructional choices our teachers are making every day in the moment. But that's facilitated by this coach that's coming from the outside. The power of having an internal coach is we could do that on a smaller or even more frequent scale at buildings. What does it look like if the coach co-leads or models? And then what does that reflection process look like? What can we pull from that and learn from that? So thinking about that opportunity for all of our teachers. both for training with new content and also thinking about those practices. And then we have a lot of those small group spaces, whether it's our instructional leadership teams that are happening at schools, middle school math department teams, data teams, or some other teams that might be digging deeply into some of their instructional work or their data. This person, again, can be a really great, these people can be really great supports and resources in implementing that work on that targeted area. And then moving towards that one-on-one and thinking about how do we make sure that folks feel supported. That opportunity, I can tell you that there are teachers who are like, can anyone just come in and talk to me about this piece? Or can someone come in and try this with my students? Or is there any way I can go see someone? They're asking for that space and that support. And I do my best to do it, but there's only so much bandwidth with that, and the power of having these folks who their dedicated job is to be that instant support in mathematics for our staff, I think is incredibly powerful. So that idea of that one-to-one coaching and facilitation support for those teachers as we move forward and continue to integrate our improved practices and our rich curriculum materials, I think is just really powerful and really exciting. I will also say, maybe one of the benefits is us being a district to be a little bit later with having some of these instructional coaches, and with our relatively new adoption, we really have a great network from around the state and other districts that we can ask, what worked well, what were some of those pitfalls we can avoid, so how are we working with our neighboring districts to utilize and understand what works well, and also the fantastic partnership that we have with Salem State. And in fact, it just so happens that the folks that we're working with, this is really a great area of their research and their expertise is around coaching. So how do we make sure that we capitalize on those folks that are most current in this field to really build the system up as the way that we have that embedded professional learning and the way that we as educators continue to grow in our own practice. So I'm really thrilled and excited to be having a chance to talk about this and share this information with you all.
Sarah, go ahead.
I have a couple questions. I can pause for others to chip in, but I'm super excited to see this in the budget. So excited. I guess my first question is 2 enough? So what does that look like for math specifically, Heather, for K-8? That's a lot of grades.
Yeah.
A lot of curriculum. So I'll pause there. That's my first question. Is 2 enough people?
That's a really good question. To be honest with you, I think one of the cautionary tales I've heard from the field and also read in the research is if you go too big too quick, the likelihood of it not being done well is a risk. And so that's why I think for those first 2 years, if we're thinking about these roles, this partnership being, building that sort of that connection with all, right? That training and the PD and the opportunities for everyone, so they can start to build relationships, start to get a feel for, what does it look like and sound like in our Reading Public Schools classrooms? What does that vertical coherence mean? I think our students go through our K-8, so how do we have an understanding of that flow? I think that's an important piece. As we go and we move into more of the increased emphasis on that idea of that one-to-one, that personalized coaching, perhaps, but I think by thinking about it with 2 and having it be K-8, which I think was a thoughtful choice on behalf of the district administration. You have 2 folks that can partner together, yet more likely you'll have folks that have differing experiences, more of a secondary experience, an elementary experience, so they can complement and grow each other's own coaching expertise, content expertise, but also be attending to, what we don't have is equal need, right? We wouldn't want every teacher, you get 5 minutes every other Tuesday, yours is a Wednesday, right? What we want to do is respond to where that need is, both based on what we're seeing from our students and what we're hearing from our teachers. So this lets us start to build those systems to make sure we're doing it thoughtfully and doing it with folks who really can start to get to know our teachers. And, our teachers are such thoughtful practitioners, and they themselves know what their strengths are and what their needs are. So how do we use these folks to provide that support? Could we potentially someday scale up? I mean, that would be awesome. But I think there's also being really thoughtful about making sure that we're not throwing too many pieces at something without sort of building the structure. And I think really that's where we're at right now.
Okay. Thank you. And quick follow-up question. Sure. I think it's quick. I don't know. Thank you. That's really helpful. So I guess on the flip, so we've made significant investments as a district in both literacy and math over the years. So we're talking about supporting our math educators, specifically with instructional coaches, thrilled about on the literacy side. So are we thinking for now, we have our core coaches plus Aaron plus now assistant principals. Is that enough for now for literacy? Do we see ourselves moving in that direction potentially? Maybe that's down the line.
speaking to what Heather just said too, like if we throw too many people in
Sure.
at once, it's going to be a whole lot and be really overwhelming,
Yep.
right? I think too, as we're exploring middle school literacy with the literacy leadership team, like we don't want to put
Yep.
coaches in there at this point because
Sure.
it wouldn't make sense. We wouldn't be poised for it to really take off. So I think right now with our coaching and the work, like our implementation team is doing all that, I think we are set right now for the next couple of years for success with literacy, for sure. But building out the structure, like if we are talking about really like making this part of what we do in Reading, I think starting small and really growing it is the way to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Heather, you intimated that one of these coaches might be more focused on elementary and one maybe more focused on 6 through 8, or it just might evolve naturally that way or not. In the case of somebody who you expected to maybe focus more on elementary, would your expectation be that they have expertise or experience with IM, or is this somebody who's just a talented coach that can learn the curriculum? Like how do you think
Great
about
question. I wouldn't say would focus more on. What I would say is when we're thinking about our hiring, I would want to be mindful that we're hiring coaches who have complementary skills, not necessarily, duplicative. So like, we really want to be thinking about this as a coaching team that can be responsive. And that might be level-based, it might be special ed, general ed, it might be, we could really be intentional about finding diversity of strengths. Because I think a big piece is, no matter what experience these folks have, there's a learning curve that will come. And the curve might be, I'm an expert in IM and I taught it, but maybe I haven't ever worked in adults with supporting adults. That might be a shift. It might be I've worked at middle, but I haven't ever experienced early elementary. It might be that I've worked across content areas, but I've really been in. So whatever that depth of expertise is, there'll be a learning space. So if we can make sure that we're thoughtful in that process, and I think Dr. Milichewski even mentioned with the assistant principals, this has to be something that we have, broad folks at the table to make sure that the folks we're finding are the right people. That is critical, and that those folks, what they're bringing, will complement each other and complement what our staff's needs are. So it might be that they're bringing expertise in IM or in vision. It might be range of grades. It might be, particular skill set. So I think the openness is that we find two folks that they can learn from each other and be, thoughtfully responsive to our staff's needs. Okay. Was that too general of an answer?
No, I think it's helpful. I guess I'm just wondering, how important is it with IM being so new, like how much of the coaching that our teachers need today is really about IM versus general instructional practices? Like I'm just curious
I would say
how
both.
heavily you lean into that.
I think it's a great question. I would say both. And I think what IM does really well is they didn't really create a whole lot of new things. They took the richest instructional practices that were out in the field and really brought them together in a really comprehensive curriculum. So a lot of what you'll find in IM, those instructional routines and those different components are really the strongest practices out in the field. So if folks are current in that field, they're going to be familiar with at least some of the components of it. I think it would definitely be a bonus.
Okay.
So
thank you. Carla.
Kind of piggybacking on what John was saying, and if you had talent, right, if you had all the talent you ever needed with multiple people, how would you divide up those two jobs? How would you envision it? Like, how would you invite, would you have two people who do the same thing and share responsibilities, or how do you think you would divide it?
that is a really, really good question, and I'm not the right person to answer because their roles are really responsive to what they're hearing from the teachers as their needs. And so I think it would probably come in waves and accordions depending on time of year, depending on veteran or newness of staff, if I have staff that are well-trained or relatively new to their area. So honestly, I think it would probably be really variable depending on both time of year and that trend in that year. If you have any teacher turnover or folks shifting grade levels, that it's more likely to be continually responsive. I think it's likely going to end up being that people maybe have areas that really become theirs. Maybe it is grade level pockets. Maybe it is the curricular tools. Maybe it is, this person who's really phenomenal about thinking about formative assessments and using those routines, and others are really good about in the moment or the planning. But again, I think what that split would look like, I think, is really going to come from what our teachers are saying they need, because this is that embedded professional support for them. So I don't have a clean answer for you because I think it would be premature for me to assume that it would be a clean divide on any particular line.
Is it unrealistic to think that, and this is someone who's not educational, I don't have an educational background, but would it be unrealistic to expect somebody to be able to come in? Like, I see in my head a vertical shift, a vertical split almost, that they have expertise in all the content area for all the grades. Am I off my rocker with that assessment?
I think the beautiful thing about math is that the strong instructional practices that work with kindergartners can also work with 12th graders. The content becomes more complex, but the instructional routines themselves, there's a reason that the tools that we use is a benefit to the vertical articulation of those curriculum, because honestly, some of the routines that our youngest learners are doing look really great when you see them in a high school classroom. So there's a knowledge of the content, right? Like understanding math, just being a talented mathematician and somebody who's worked hard to understand that math progression. There's the math practices and pedagogy, and there's that, how do I support adult learners, right? And those three buckets, and these people have to integrate all. I suspect we'll find folks that have different levels of strength across, and then we support that building of those coach roles. So what does that look like, and how do we make sure that they're supporting each other, and that we as a system are setting them up for success so that they're able to do that good work of helping teachers. So I'm looking for a unicorn, but I know they're out there, so yeah.
Good.
So I want to kind of build on all of the questions asked so far, and probably the back and forth that you and I have already had. So going first to Sarah's, if I look at the counts of staff we have that would be eligible under this, we're north of 100 staff that would be relative to this, 88 in the elementary grades, assuming it's one per cohort in the middle school grades, that's 6 per each middle school, so that's 12, so we're at 100. There's a little bit more than that at middle school, so we're a little bit north of 100. The research says 100 is kind of the lowest spot you can do to roll this out, right? If you go, the highest spot. If you go higher than 100, your returns greatly diminish. What the research didn't say is coach to teacher ratio. Have you been able to drill into any of that anywhere else? Is that documented anywhere that you've been able to find that a 50-to-1 ratio is a suitable ratio?
So I think
Or is a 25-to-1 ratio a little bit better, or whatever else the case?
That's a really good question. And in fact, the research showed that there wasn't a trend with the coach-teacher ratio. That 100 point is, the thing for us is that the number of teachers in that data trend, it's really like size of a district, which that's non-negotiable. Like, we have the teachers we have, the class sizes we have, right? So those are the numbers. One of the pieces that a lot of the research says is it's likely we're seeing things around these buckets of time because larger scale studies tend to have, diminished impacts. But one of the biggest pieces you found is that for most of those districts, it was when they scaled up and tried too hard to build consistent platforms around really large. So when they had, really, really large systems attempting to do coaches and have consistent coaching job expectations across really big systems, you saw the diminished return. And I think that's where the scaling up becomes sort of the leverage point. So it wasn't ever, I didn't see anything that was a ratio trend, and a lot of what they said was it was about clarity and purpose. So is there a clarity and a precision in what the job is and what we're asking them to do? And when they're doing the coaching with the teachers, is it clear about what they're doing with the purpose with the work with the teachers? So it sort of said in the study that it was less about that ratio of numbers. I think that's where that piece of not trying to go, get 10 coaches and hopefully we can be consistent in being intentional about building that system slow, so that a scale up of anything isn't unmanageable, that we're really being thoughtfully responsive to our system. And then continually reviewing. I think it's, our responsibility, just like we do with our students and our teachers every day, is what are we seeing, what is working, what isn't working, and how can we appropriately respond to that. So I think using the research that's out there, ongoing data work with our teachers in district to make sure that we're revising and adjusting appropriately, and working with districts around the state. The benefit is we've got a great network in Massachusetts of folks doing this work, both paired with curriculum and outside of, that we can learn from what works and what challenges they have and personalize it for our staff in Reading. So
building on that, and can I keep going?
Sure.
And some of the questions in terms of skills and some of your answers in terms of skills. as well as your curriculum review cycle where we more or less have a rubric we're filling out. We need to answer this, we need to answer that, we need to answer this. Have you already drafted a rubric of what you're looking for this role with all the different skills you've gone through? So you can say, this person will fill out 5 of those skills, this person will fill out 5 of those skills, and we have these 2 gaps that we know we can support them with to make this successful.
That's a good question. I don't know if, Tom or Sarah, if you have an answer about sort of the hiring process, or?
One thing I can mention, similar to what Dr. Milichewski mentioned about building out the AP roles, we've also reached out to our partners at Salem State, as Heather had alluded to. In particular, one of the professors we're working with, his area of research is instructional coaching. So we have a time set up already to sit with them to start mapping out exactly what you're talking about, more detailed job description, and looking at sort of the profile of what would work best with the structure that we're proposing.
I guess my last, sorry.
Go ahead, if it's your last one, let's squeeze it in. I'm
last,
going to hold you to that, though.
my last one this topic.
Okay.
When we talk about the focus of teacher needs, and I think, Heather, you mentioned, there might be some that will opt in and say they're going to want this, and have we considered, like we say, a forced opt-in for teachers who demonstrate a need in an area or are freshly new to the content area, or maybe have lower growth scores over time in an area? Have we considered that at all as part of this process, or are we really going to keep it fully opt-in?
You're asking a good question. I can't see the future. I wish I could. What I can tell you is the right now plan is I think if we're really thinking about building that consistency of a system, and we think about the access to the coaches within the first 2 years of really being around that idea of what are those external systems we've already had in place that we can bring internally now with these roles. We can think about that support with a small group, and we can focus on the folks opting in within the first 2 years, because I think that will let our coaches build their relationships, build their understanding, build their partnerships with teachers and teams, and then you get those ripple effects of, well, I might not go ask the coach, I know Erin had the coach and she's trying something new and maybe I'll go see her. So I think the coaching benefit goes beyond those individuals and really helps us as a system to look at what are those strong practices we expect to see, what are those pieces that we're looking for, are we seeing it in some areas and not others, and then as a leadership team, what do we do about it? Is it resources? Is it opportunities to support our teachers in that loop? But you also asked about teachers that might need new support. And I think this will also help us with that curriculum integrity, where we've invested so much work in this curriculum, and then you have a new hire who's missed 2 years of that ongoing training. These folks can really help lean into that to make sure that new folks coming on board or folks that might be new to grade levels can really get folks so that it's not just like, jump in and hopefully you figure it out, but really there can be targeted support to make sure that folks that are new to that content have that really targeted, thoughtful support. So I think that is a great space for these coaches to provide us some really good resources.
Erin.
So I'm also really excited about the position. If I'm hearing you correctly, there's the likelihood that both of them would spend time in all 7 schools. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. I actually like that more than what I was sort of envisioning, because do you imagine then that they can support not just vertical alignment, but the horizontal alignment, so that what is happening across our second grades in the district, or what is happening across our 7th grades, or our 7-8 math classes at 2 different schools?
Got it.
So if they're both moving around, then they can have that, firsthand insight.
And I think that's the power of a team of 2, is that, if there's, like, let's say there's a particular grade level who might have a need or a question or something, having 2 folks, it could be one to lead something and one to provide coverage for that math class so the math learning continues. It could be 2 thinking partners, one to lead, one to observe and provide feedback. So I think the 2 coaches together allows that really targeted support. And when our goal with math is that we have coherence and consistency, so that, there's not that everyone has the same experience, but everyone has that equal right and access to that rich learning. And I think that these folks are really the bridge to make sure we can do that. So it might be I know you had a question about what does it look like with first grade, and I know there's a room in first grade doing it. I'll teach your math class, you go watch that first grade. Or it could be, I lead the math class, the whole third grade come see. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility. It could be, maybe that 7-8 team is really looking at a recent assessment. Can I facilitate that meeting to help them think about their data? So I think there's a lot of power in these roles to be able to support the vertical and that horizontal alignment through the instructional routines and practices.
Great.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more thing?
Sure.
Differentiation.
Yes.
Is there also the opportunity for coaches to assist, particularly I'm thinking about students who are not feeling challenged in our classes, which we know happens. Is there the opportunity for them to help teachers look at that and manage that and address that need?
I suspect you'll have a few teachers that will be the thing that they're going to be first, that I feel good about this. I have, colleagues and peers who we support with this, but this is the group that I really want some support with. So I actually think that that's really helping students who are ready to push or who might be faster learners. How do we support them to make sure that they're staying connected and engaged? I think that's an awesome coaching space.
Great.
So, I sort of think the answer is like D, all of the above. I really think the power is that these folks have the luxury of being math specific and then can really be the folks that can connect teachers with resources, with supports, with peers. So they're really, I think, again, they're like building a network of learning. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Sarah's going to close us out.
One more. Okay.
And then we're going to
So
take a
I get-
recess.
The opt-in, can you tell I'm excited about this? The opt-in piece went over my head, so thank you for flagging that more specifically. I think it was Tom. So I guess I would say my concern about that is, and so yes, absolutely, opt-in, great. My just life observation is typically people who are really excited learners about certain things, that they will always take every opportunity to learn more and be coached. So I think that's fantastic that our strong learners or strong teachers will absolutely opt in to continue to grow their practice. I would just encourage us as we roll this out to look at additional opportunities to encourage others to take part in it, whether that's through the professional learning communities, et cetera, so that we ensure that everybody is accessing it. Sometimes I don't know I need to work on something specifically, and my learning community, my group, my team might say, here's an opportunity for us to grow X, Y, and Z.
And I think that's where, if we go back to the why is it timed, why are we well timed, we've got consistent curriculum tools. We have a consistent assessment platform that we're using in different levels, and we have, we've rolled it out at all levels. So now it's one of those pieces of, I might know that I'm excited and I want to learn. It might be that my data is showing me I'm struggling with something, what do I do? And now all of our teachers in that K-8 span have access to math data consistently. So wow, that could be a trigger for me. Or it could be like, oof, I don't know that I'm ready yet to say one-on-one, but like I said, I know someone on my team shared a strategy and they're willing to share it out. Or, maybe I don't know this person yet, so I want to see what they do in this group thing. Oh, interesting. Maybe I'm willing to ask for a question or a resource. So I think the professional learning with the coaching, I don't think it always means one-on-one, I'm giving you feedback. I think there's lots of places that it will just enhance that learning across all. And then I think, the rising tide raises all boats. The stronger our practices get within the system, so you get that peer impact and that ripple impact. And I think the more we embed sort of all aspects of the curriculum, the implementation of the tools, using our assessments regularly, and that expectation for strong instructional practices, I think we'll have a lot of pathways in. So I think you raise a really good question, but I think, there's lots of vehicles through which these positions will really open up opportunities. So thank you for saying that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
With apologies to our remaining presenters, we're going to take just a 5-minute recess, and then we'll close it out. Sorry, I've been trying to suppress a cough all night, so we'll come back in 5 minutes. All right, we are back in order at 8:58 for our timestamp. And we're going to talk about MLLs next, I believe.
I'm excited to have Karen Hall, our director of our multilingual learning department. And Karen is here to talk about the item that's listed in the budget. You'll see listed, we've increased the FTEs of our English as second language teachers by 1.5. And ask Karen to come and just sort of talk about why we are requesting this increase and what the impact is on our MLL students.
Well, thank you for having me. So when I started here 8 years ago, there was 2 of us for the whole district. Actually 1.5 because I was part-time. And then we hired another teacher about a year later, and then that has been it for many years, that there's been 2.5 of us. And we've made do, and with our old administration, we often asked for more teachers and it never happened. And so I'm so grateful that with our new administration, with all of you, that last year we were able to add more staff, and now this year, you've actually already approved this 1.5 for this year, so thank you. And now we're looking to have it moving forward for next year as well. So I feel like I'm here and you've already given so much to our department, so I'm so grateful for that. But I want to explain why this ask for all these teachers. So if you look at the graph that I have here, it shows our growth in multilingual learners over the past 5 years. The red bar at the top is the total number of multilingual learners district-wide. So we're now up to 60. Actually, as of today, we had another student register, so 61. And that is our largest number that we've had since in history. And then the orange bar underneath is actually the more important piece that is why we really need some staff at this point, is that our beginning level multilingual learners have really grown. And so we previously were having a lot of students that were coming in. They'd already been in a district in Massachusetts. They had some English. They were able to participate in their general education classes with a bit of support, getting pulled out with an ESL teacher for a period a day. The new students that we're getting now are coming directly from other countries, often without any exposure to English or a small amount of exposure to English, and need so much more. So this year, 63% of our multilingual learners are beginners. Over the past 5 years, that has averaged at about 30%. So this year has been a really big change in our population we're seeing coming into Reading. Most of the students are coming from Brazil. Many of their families don't have any English either, so we're working with families that we also are having to use interpreters and helping them to understand the school system. There's a lot that has to go into that process. So things are really shifting for our department. If you could go to the next slide, please. So in terms of additional supports for beginner multilingual learners, DESE recommends 2 to 3 times more ESL instructional hours for a beginner than they do for an intermediate student. So an intermediate student is recommended to have 1 period per day of ESL instruction, whereas a beginner is recommended to have 2 to 3 periods per day. So up to really half their day getting ESL instruction because they're coming in and can't really access the curriculum in the classroom as it stands. So that is really significant. So even though we're up to 60 as opposed to 50 students last year, you can think with 37 of them being newcomers, that it's almost like we're talking about 100 students this year because of the increase in hours that they need. As I mentioned a little, all these beginners also have additional needs. So classroom teachers need a lot more coaching, collaboration with ESL teachers. There's a lot more family outreach that has to happen. There's a lot more translation needs. So there are a lot of other things that come along with this as well. So what are the outcomes that come along with adding additional ESL teachers? First of all, we would decrease the number of schools that the ESL teachers are operating in. Right now, the teachers in my department are working in 2 or 3 schools. With the additional of the 1.5 teachers, we can get everybody down to 2 schools or less. And obviously having teachers in less schools means that they're having more time for collaboration, they're more a part of that staff, they're more involved with what's going on in the school, they can really provide better instruction. They also spend less time traveling from school to school and getting stuck going across train tracks as they pass through Reading. So that's a good thing too. It also increases the instructional hours per multilingual learner, obviously that being the goal here. I mentioned the coaching and collaboration, and then it allows us just to strengthen our family outreach and support of our families as well. I will say that all of this, we need to continue monitoring. We came to you last year with the need for more teachers. We're asking for it this year, and it's likely if this growth continues that will be the case going forward. So I don't want this to feel like we're done with this process once we get through this. I would also, after that wonderful presentation we just heard, I would love to consider some coaches in the future, because I think this is an area where we could really get into that. I've been doing some coaching this year, and our high school teacher's been doing some coaching, and it's really going well. So I would love to think about that going forward. So I just want to plant the seed a little bit that we do have certainly some needs moving forward as a department, but I would be so grateful to be able to increase the staff as a starting step for our students. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Go ahead.
How many existing staff do you have right now?
Sure, so 3.5. And actually, no, technically have 3. That half is part of this 1.5, so she already went up that half. So yeah, we'll be up to 4.5 once we do this.
Thank you.
Did you have another one?
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
For a student who comes in elementary school who doesn't know English.
Yep.
What is their trajectory on when they will not need supports anymore?
Sure, so it varies a lot depending on students' other needs, their background, their literacy exposure, any sort of trauma, any disabilities, those sorts of things. But generally, students that come in, if they start in kindergarten with us, usually by 2nd or 3rd grade, they stop needing direct ESL instruction. They may still need some support in the classroom, but that's usually when we would exit a student from the program.
Thank you.
Tom.
So thank you so much for coming. I'm ashamed to say that I haven't met you before tonight, so thank you for coming and outlining the background of the program and the need here. I especially appreciate the, DESE recommendations in terms of how much services are necessary. That makes me beg the question, though, how on earth are they doing that while also learning the rest of the core curriculum? What does the schedule look like for them? How do you structure that? How much of that is push in versus pull out? It sounds like it's all pull out. Are you co-teaching essentially the core curriculum as part of that process, or can you explain exactly how that works?
Sure. So I would love for us to be doing more push-in, but at the moment, with us being spread as thin as we are, it's almost impossible. The kids are in lots of different classes. A lot of our students are the only multilingual learner in their classroom, so push-in becomes really difficult. We have started a lot more push-in at the high school this year, and it's really going well. But we are doing pull-out, and we have a curriculum that incorporates a lot of the other areas. That's what ESL instruction is all about, is you're teaching English through the other content areas. So students are learning through a social studies unit or a science unit or a math work. So they're doing things that are sort of big concepts that they're going to see in the classroom. It doesn't directly parallel what's happening in the classroom. In some districts it does. A lot of times in larger districts where you can have one ESL teacher that just teaches 2nd grade in one school, it's a lot easier to do that. A lot of our groups end up being 3, 4, 5 grade level students, or we have our high school classes 9 to 12. So you really can't do directly what's happening in the classroom, but it's all about exposing students to the vocabulary, the concepts, the ideas, the structures of the work that they're going to be doing in the classroom and building their English as you do it.
Sure.
So does that mean we have the same type of rules we have for special education in terms of the gap of years? So you can only do 3 through 5 and K through 2 in the elementary schools, for example?
Do you mean in terms of student groupings?
Student groupings, yeah.
So DESE requires that students are within, usually it's a grade span of 3 to 4 years. There's not a specific grade span, so we can do 2, 3, we can do 4, 5.
But not more than 4, right?
But it's more about what their proficiency level is. So students are scored for their English proficiency level on a scale of 1 to 6, and they have to be within one proficiency level of each other to be paired together. So you can put a 3rd grader together with a 1st grader that are both beginners, and that's totally fine. You can't put 2 2nd graders together that one's an intermediate and one's a beginner. So sometimes that we have to get creative with groupings for that reason.
Sounds very similar. One more question.
Sure.
And then I might have more, but for now. You mentioned a lot of the students coming in are from Brazil. So that indicates a Portuguese need.
Yeah.
Do you have a breakdown of the different secondary languages, or primary languages in their case, secondary for us, that we have to cover? Portuguese, Spanish, are there any others that we have to cover as part of this right now?
So we have, I actually have my stats here because I was thinking somebody might ask that, and there's a lot of languages. We have 19 different languages represented. Many of them are single students, single families that speak that language. Our primary is Portuguese with 29 students. After that, we have 9 Spanish-speaking students, and then the numbers get a lot smaller. 3 Korean students, 2 Turkish-speaking students, 3 Gujarati-speaking students. So it really, it's a big mix once you get out of that big group of Portuguese. So.
How on earth do you do that? Thank you for all the work you're doing there.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
for having
Yeah,
me.
thank you so much.
Shooting air door. Go ahead. Either way.
Go ahead.
No, you. Go ahead.
So the next item that falls under Objective 2 relates to the program reviews that have been underway in our special education department. And so tonight, to speak in detail about the positions that you see listed there, we have Allison Wright, our Director of Special Education, and Melissa Forbes, one of our team chairs.
All right, so thank you for having us tonight. So we wanted to start tonight by just looking at a little historical review of some of the work that we've been doing since Jen and I started working as a team in 2019. As we've previously discussed, as one of the regulations is that we need to complete, and we've talked about this at this committee meeting as well as at CPAC, is that every year we need to complete an evaluation of one of our programs. And this can happen either as an internal review or an external review. When we started as a team, we really knew that there were a lot of concerns and questions about our systems and our processes and our programming. So we really wanted to start in our first year in 2019 to really look at our overall functioning of our special education programs. From that work, we wanted to look even closer the following year into our reading evaluations and our instructional systems. Following that, last year, as you all know, we've been talking a lot about this, we decided to do 4 external evaluations. So as you know, really the regulations is we needed to do 1 a year, but we felt like this was really a high priority to be looking into our specialized programs. So we completed the evaluations of the Embark, SOAR, SAIL, and REACH program. This year, we're just finishing up the evaluation of our RISE program, and we're going to be jumping into our Learning Center evaluation. And then next year, we've already started the process of looking for somebody to be completing our evaluation for our LEAD program. So one of the things that we've learned through these program evaluations as well as through the TFM, that we really need to be focusing on that least restrictive environment and working on that referral process. And as you, in really reflecting on all the practices that we have to ensure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. So up here, the next slide is talking about some of the history of our recommendations that we've learned from the evaluations that we've already completed and some of the work that we've already started. And this summarizes a lot of the impacts that we have, that these evaluations have had on our instructional practices. So I'll just go through some of these things that we've started to work on already. Some of these things are developing clear and consistent communication systems with all our families. Some of those ways that we're doing that is through, we continue to have office hours. We started that a few years ago. We're doing that, Jen and I are doing that on a weekly basis, which has really helped to partner with our families to really make sure that we're being open and transparent and clear and just available to meet with families to make sure we're meeting the needs of all students. We've worked hard on aligning all of our protocols and processes across all of our schools. We've done a lot of training on reading in the brain, so all of our team chairs, our school psychologist, our general ed reading specialist, our speech and language pathologists, and special ed teachers, all were trained with reading in the brain to get a deeper understanding of the foundations of reading and how it impacts students' learning. As you all know, we added the special education literacy coach, Renee Lamaro, who is supporting across all of the buildings. And she is supporting all of our teams with implementing our reading protocol, which is helping to ensure that we are assessing students across all areas of reading where students have reading concerns. We've done additional training in specialized programs such as Language Live. Jen mentioned earlier our training that we have about 17 teachers being trained in the Wilson program right now. And we've trained all of our elementary teachers to use the program RAVO. So we're really excited about all those pieces. Additionally, those final professional developments, the key comprehension routine, the key vocabulary routine, the Project Read, and the landmark outreach, those are all professional developments that we've provided to and have made access, all teachers have access to those professional developments over the past couple of years. Keep going a couple, there we go. You've all seen this slide before. This is just a graphic that kind of summarizes what some of our themes are from our program evaluations. And we included TFM there because, as Jen mentioned, we were really excited. I know it might not be so exciting to others, but we were really excited that they really aligned very closely. Everybody knows the executive summaries are posted so people can go back and review some of those recommendations. There were a lot of recommendations in there. And we've heard the urgency from the community about this work, and we have that same urgency. And so we already started doing a lot of this work. And there are a lot of recommendations, as you can see. All these recommendations that are highlighted are all things that we've already started working on, and Melissa's actually going to go into some of these details of things that have already are in process. But additionally, we did have some recommendations from our program evals as well as the TFM that aligned that do have some budget implications, and we wanted to talk about that next. All right, so from all of those recommendations, we really, as an internal team, looked at trying to calibrate and coordinate all of those recommendations to really look at our priorities, the highest priorities which had budget implications. So these aren't in any order, but of priority here, but wanted to go through each one. So the first one is hiring a transition specialist. So this is the recommendation right from the evaluation, and really that transition specialist is going to be supporting our students with the transition process for 14 to 22-year-olds. So this is going to be working on completing transition assessments, supporting the teams, families, and the staff on working on students' vocational development, independent living skills, and access to the Reading community. We want our students out in the community and working on their skills in the community. This position will also be helping to be working on our 18 to 22-year-old program as we work as we get students, as they mentioned earlier, the not sending students to post moving forward, that this will help to build our own program for students so we can meet their needs internally from age 18 to 22. The next one is hiring a dedicated SOAR Embark BCBA. So this will be a fourth BCBA added, which will be very exciting, to really focus on that sub-separate program, to be completing the FBAs, creating behavioral support plans, and supporting our staff and families within the sub-separate setting. And then the final one up on the slide is for a program administrator to supervise our specialized programs. So this was a priority that we felt like we wanted to start right away. So what we have done, and we have talked about this previously, is that we have identified team chairs that are overseeing this work right now, because we felt like this wasn't something that we could wait on, and we needed to make sure that we didn't wait for the budget cycle to catch up with us, that we started doing this work. So as Melissa will talk about in a few minutes, she's going to be talking about a little bit of that work that she's been doing with the other team chairs to address some of those other recommendations. And as we're moving through the remainder of this year and into next year, we really want to be assessing whether this model is the right model moving forward, because we all know that the team chairs work very hard. They have a whole nother job to be doing. So we want to make sure that this is a effective and a sustainable model. So that is something that we're going to be working really closely with the team to monitor. So let Melissa talk about some of the other recommendations that are in place now.
First, I just want to say being here tonight is really exciting. When I'm going through the things that we're working on, it really aligns with all the other things that are happening in the district, so it's really exciting hearing everything that's happening right now. So I'm the SOAR coordinator. All of the coordinators, we meet right now bi-weekly with the, not advocates, what are the, consultants. So, sorry, it's past my bedtime, so excuse me. So we're meeting by week with the consultants to talk about what our plans are, our next steps, kind of working through what our timelines would be. In doing that, one of the things we're looking at is how we're communicating with staff and families about those next steps. So recently, right before winter break, we emailed all the program families and the staff telling them, look, our first step that we were looking at in January right now is that we're looking to do observations of all the programs that we're overseeing. In doing so, we were thinking like the students are the first things we want to see. We want to meet the students in these programs so we get to understand and know the students, that they're not just IEPs, they're not just numbers. We want to really meet those students. It was great. The high school staff came to Coolidge last week and got to walk through all the Embark and Sail program, but they also met all the other students in the other programs because everyone's kind of grouped together. So it was really nice experience. I'm going to Birch tomorrow, and Kelly DeCato is coming to Coolidge tomorrow morning. I'm going to Birch in the afternoon. So I think we're really excited about the work we're doing and really invested in it. Seeing the recommendations and working in the district for so long, we're excited because we know this is the direction that we need to move in to make things happen. The next thing that we're really focusing on, and we started this at our meeting today, is really looking at the program descriptions. Really honing in on those and making them really more concise and really describing what the program actually is. And part of that also is adding points for teams to consider when you're looking at IEP meetings and you're coming to the table. What are some things you need to be considering for the student to make to be referred to this program? Really looking at the referral process, as Allison was saying, making sure we're making those recommendations in the least restrictive environment. So that's a really big piece that we're looking at there, is making sure that that's happening. Another thing we're talking about is the professional development that staff and paras are going to need in these programs, and really honing in on those the needs of those students in the individual programs, or as a whole, kind of where we're looking to support them. I think the coaches, for me, is so exciting, because I know that's something that, having the gen ed staff having that support to help, whether it's, students struggling or students that need more challenging, I think that's really exciting. So I was excited to see that. Another piece we're working on is consistent data collection systems and making sure that that's consistent throughout all the buildings. So we know what the data is, where we're keeping it, and being able to collect that data to make more meaningful and decisions based on what the students need. I think that's it. Anything to leave out?
No. I think one of the exciting things that, since they're able to meet as a group every other week with the consultants, it's really like Heather and Erin were talking about that collaboration, that consistency. So that is really helping, being able to work as a group of all of the program coordinators is really helping us move forward across the entire district, across all programs at the same time in that consistent manner. So we're excited about that piece.
And I think we've been able in our conversations to see what's the difference between elementary, middle, and high school, because all of us are at those levels. So those conversations are really meaningful and, coming down to how we're going to make the change.
Sarah.
Question time, I wasn't sure if we were saying. It's also past my bedtime, so if you could remind me, for the program, the team chair is playing a role as a program administrators. Is that specific to the programs we've already reviewed, or does that also include LEAD and Learning Center?
So for LEAD, yes, Renee is overseeing LEAD. So that is in place. She's been meeting with the group. Even though we didn't review that, we wanted that program to continue to start this work at the same time. For Learning Center, we're starting that review now. So as soon, we're hoping, it is in process and right as we're speaking to get that going. So we're looking to see those recommendations after.
Follow-up questions, I'm sure about that. Just thinking, you had mentioned how nice it was to be able to meet all the individual students in a program, and then my mind immediately went to Learning Center of how do we have a similar kind of feel, and what do students need, but knowing the numbers are significantly larger.
And in addition to their meeting, we meet every week with the team chairs as a whole group for 2 hours every week. So we have a lot of conversations just about collaborating on just how to meet the needs of all students within our programs and our Learning Center. So that work, there is a lot of consultation and collaboration during that time as well.
Thank you.
Tom, go for it.
I'm waiting, I'm letting you.
No, I knew it was coming.
So, first of all, thank you both for coming as well. I always appreciate hearing from the proverbial horse's mouth, so I appreciate that. One thing, there's 2 or 3 questions here that I have, but the first one I have is points for teams to consider. Is that another way to say entry and exit criteria, and why aren't we just saying entry and exit criteria?
Yes, you're right. That is another way of saying entrance and exit criteria. And really the reason that we are going towards the direction of points for team to consider is because it is all a team decision. So whether a student is referred to a program is a team decision. So we really need to have it be driven by the team process rather than criteria. It has to be, there's always going to be a little bit of an outlier, because that's what the student requires. So that's why it's a consideration based on the team decision. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but it's not the language used in the program reviews. So as part of that conversation, and it's not the language we've also talked about with CPAC either, where it was specifically entry and exit criteria. So if we're going to go down that path, we need to bring this back and explain the difference and the reason why.
Yep, so we did talk about it at the last time we presented, when we did the program evaluations, and we did consult with our attorney, Michael Joyce, about some of the legal components around it too, and that really emphasizing that team process, that has to be the ultimate, and we're just going to have to explain that the points for teams to consider really is what is exit and entrance criteria without having that definitive piece.
It's not a firm line.
Correct.
It's a little bit more gray.
Yeah.
Like Rose said.
Yeah. And I know that this has been something that CPAC and the community has been asking for a long time, but we also need to make sure that we're following that team process to fidelity too, so.
And I'm fully on board with supporting that process. So I guess just building on that a little bit, one probing question is points for teams to consider theoretically in the past, even though we didn't officially have that, we kind of had that, but it led to odd groupings in some of our programs, especially in the LEAD program. Students that were not the same categorization, for lack of a way to put it. How are we preventing that with the points for teams to consider, and/or somewhat to align to the conversation we just had with the MLLs, making sure that if we do have 2 students in the program but have a different profile or at their different level in their profile, for lack of a way to put it, that we're teaching them aligned with the right level?
It's a really good question. I know that one of the things that we're really focusing on is that referral process, and the work that we're going to be doing through the Learning Center evaluation is really going to be supporting a lot of that work, because really the program descriptions as well as the TFM in our exit interviews with the TFM, they really gave us quite a big clue that really looking at that least restrictive environment is a very big focus of of the state moving forward. So that's really where we need to be looking at our learning centers to make sure that we are meeting all of our students' needs as best as possible in the least restrictive environment. So in case they do need a higher level of programming, we're really referring the right students to the programs. So we have that cohort that is appropriate in the programs.
Okay. One more question here, because when I was reading through the program descriptions, I didn't interpret transition specialist the same way that we're outlining it here. Obviously, I understand what the 14 to 22-year-old transition specialist and its focus on.
Yep.
But when I read the program descriptions, I meant to go back and refresh myself to make sure I'm not off base, because I may have just taken this interpretation away, and I know this is a problem, we have a transition problem between elementary, middle, and high as well. Are we going to leverage this specialist, or is that part of the vertical work of the program administrators to make sure that the transition between the different levels is properly handled?
The vertical work is really where that's going to be addressed. And we know that that's an issue, and that should have been one of the things that we highlighted that Melissa really should have, that they're working on, is that we know that we need to make that transition smoother from program to or level to level. We need to be working on that process to ensure that they have a smooth transition vertically. The transition specialist is really to focus on that transition plan, but that by law we need to start looking at before a student turns 14 all the way through their 22nd birthday, if they remain with us. So that's really where they're going to be focusing. They may support some of those components moving from, but that's not going to be their main focus. That will really be the vertical work with the programs. And with the Learning Center too, because we need to be supporting our students in Learning Center transitioning as well.
Thank you both, again, and everybody else who's supporting it.
Sarah. Sorry, really quick one. Just a point of clarification again. So the Learning Center program review, will that include special education reading instruction? And if so, why are we separating that out from the lead program review as well?
So we're not going to go in, the Learning Center review is not going to go deep into our reading program. So that is potentially going to be a separate review later. And it could be incorporated a lot into our lead program within the lead program, but the Learning Center review is not going to have a deep focus on reading instruction. It is going to cover reading instruction, but not that really deep dive into the instructional practices.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you both
Thank
so
you.
much.
Oh my God, yes, we're there, almost there.
Stipends. We're doing it this year.
So-
Stipends for next year too.
So we'll wrap up this evening with a completion of the look at our third strategic objective and the investment that we're planning on making in school operations. There are two priorities for this area for the FY 2024 budget. One is to set aside about $8,000 in order to prepare and publish an annual community report similar to what we created this year. Seeking greater engagement with the community is very important, not only with our families, but also with the greater Reading community, those residents that may not be connected to the school at all or currently. We're planning on developing a community report that reflects student voice, student artwork similar to our budget book, and we'll be working with Dr. Stiles and the staff in the Embark program to have our students involved in the publication as well. We heard just a little bit in the prior presentation about developing certain skills and vocational opportunities for students. So we're hoping that will provide those students with an opportunity and all of our students to participate. And then the second piece of this investment focuses on increasing the nurses' per diem substitute wage rate. And this will actually be funded through the Department of Public Health grant. The nurses' wages we're proposing will increase from $175 per day to $225 This will allow us to be much more comparable in terms of per diem rates with other nurse subs in the surrounding communities. This year alone, the first 3 months of the school year, we had a need of 60 substitutes, and we were only able to fill about 50% of those openings. So we're finding a tremendous need for nurse subs, and we expect that this increase in the per diem wage will help tremendously. And we appreciate that the DPH grant could help fund that for us. This last slide is just another review of the budget timeline. We are going to be publishing our FAQs. We will be posting tonight's responses to a number of questions that have already been asked to our website. On the 19th, we'll have a second iteration, and on the 26th, a final iteration of any questions related to the budget. Our public hearing is on January 19th. School committee will discuss and vote on a recommended budget on the 26th, and then we'll proceed in March with a finance committee meeting and town meeting beginning on April 24th.
Chuck.
Susan, can we get a copy of tonight's PowerPoint too? We didn't
Absolutely.
have that.
It's in your inbox.
I shared it with
Yep.
you.
Oh, it is.
Just a little bit.
Just during the meeting.
It was during the presentation.
Yeah.
It just,
Never mind, thank you.
Just to add to that, can we have this presentation added to the packet and have the packet refreshed?
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I can also have, with Sue Brown's help, we can also post this to the website.
Please.
Sorry. I'm on page 42.
Yes.
The third paragraph down in the
Yes.
middle, it talks about the rates of private day placements increased by 14%, and the tuition for out-of-district private day tuition fees are set by the Commonwealth's Operational Services Division. So in the budget, the tuition rates were budgeted at 5% increase for collaborative and residential placements?
Yes.
Right? So what does the Commonwealth's Operational Services Division actually set a rate for? Day programs?
For, yes, private day out-of-district placements.
So that 14% was set by them?
That's correct.
And you know about that, obviously, before you did the
Yes.
budget?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll mention, though, Carla, that for the past 12 years, OSD has set the rate under 3%. This year was quite an adjustment and a reset.
Okay.
And it's a
Makes sense.
one-year reset. We all expect it to go back to, 2% to 3% going forward.
Thank you.
Okay. So just an observation. So I'll admit I was initially disappointed that we didn't move faster on full-day kindergarten this year. I think when we had the discussion last year and we set this sort of glide path, I think we also said, if there were an opportunity to move faster, we would. In a year like this one, where we have a very generous budget year, we've got some community priority funding, et cetera, I sort of look at it and say, well, if this isn't the year where we'd move faster, when would we? But then I hear everything we heard tonight, and these are all really critical priorities for our district. So, kudos to you, Susan, for finding a way to fund all of these things, and kudos to the team for coming up with such a comprehensive list that addresses many of our different sort of needs around the district. So I know we're going to have more discussion over the next couple of meetings, but just wanted to acknowledge that I've gotten over my disappointment for the time being. I'm glad we're making a step in the right direction, but I appreciate all the work that's gone into it to this point. So, Sarah?
Sorry.
No.
Along those same lines, I just wanted to thank you. I felt like this was a really great way to present how, as a budget, we obviously have cost centers and special ed and regular ed and all the different things, and it can be really easy to get siloed into thinking, well, this does this. And I think taking that step back and going, here's our strategic objectives and where we want to head as a district and how all those pieces come together in service of our students and our teachers and our staff. So I thought this was a great way to organize it, and I appreciated it a lot.
Okay. Is there a final motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Carla, seconded by Chuck. All in favor? And all opposed? All right, we are adjourned.